Hello and thanks for joining us for another edition of Northwest Newsweek. The OPP have charged one person with murder in connection with a death in the town of Marathon last weekend. Constable Matt Foster says it's a heartbreaking incident for the victim's family and everyone in the Marathon area.
Something like this in the community, as small as Marathon, can be nerve-wracking for something as serious like this to happen. So we just want to reassure that the OPP is doing everything they can to further investigate and to prevent something like this from happening in the future.
OPP discovered 39-year-old Charity Bittern Moses of Marathon with life-threatening injuries early the morning of July 15th. She was pronounced dead after being transported to hospital. OPP have charged 20-year-old Dallas Malley, also of Marathon, with second-degree murder. Foster says Marathon residents should not be alarmed by the continued police presence in the area, as the OPP's Criminal Investigation Branch and Forensic Identification Services remain in the town for the ongoing homicide investigation.
CIB members, the forensic members, they're going to be in Marathon conducting investigations. So you may see more police presence in the area. What that means is that they're conducting follow-up, they're conducting more extensive investigations with regards to this tragedy.
Foster is extending condolences on behalf of the OPP to the family of the victim and asks that anyone with information relevant to the investigation reach out to police or Crime Stoppers. Video posted to social media is raising concerns about police use of force in Sioux Lookout, and a warning: viewers may find the video distressing. The video appears to show a woman on the ground being punched by an officer before fighting back. The officer then appears to step back and taser the woman twice. Sioux Lookout OPP have defended the officer's conduct, saying the video captures only a portion of the July 10th incident and that the responding officer selected the most appropriate use of force. According to police, the 23-year-old woman from Casabonic Lake First Nation was detained for trespassing and became combative, punching and grabbing at the weapons on the officer's belt. They say the officer deployed the taser as a last resort to gain control and ensure public safety. Police charged the woman with assault with the intent to resist arrest. Police have also charged a 34-year-old Sioux Lookout woman with obstructing a police officer after they say she attempted to interfere. A Brampton transport driver who was involved in a fatal head-on collision 2 years ago, which claimed the life of the mayor of Schreiber, has received his punishment in court. 36-year-old Prabjot Chima was originally charged with dangerous driving causing death, but he pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of careless driving causing death and was handed a $3,000 fine. Schreiber Mayor Dave Hamilton was on his way home from a municipal league meeting in Marathon in the evening of February 13, 2021. He was driving westbound in his pickup truck during a light snowfall when an oncoming transport lost control and crashed into him at around 100 kilometers per hour. Hamilton died at the scene. An OPP later charged the transport driver. In court, Chima apologized to Hamilton's family for his actions on the night of the fatal crash. The full details can be found on tbnewswatch.com. New research has shown a link between mercury exposure and youth suicide attempts in Grassy Narrows First Nation. The study is the first peer-reviewed scientific article to connect mercury to suicidal crises. Lee Noonan has more.
Direct and indirect mercury exposure is linked to negative impacts on the mental health of children in Grassy Narrows, according to the study, which looked at the connection between child and youth suicide attempts and cumulative exposure risks over 3 generations. Lead author Donna Mergler joined community representatives at Queen's Park to present the findings.
In the 70s, following the mercury discharge, youth suicide in Grassy Narrows went from 0, it had been unheard of before that time, to very high. Indeed, between 1977 and 78, 26 young people attempted suicide in an 11-month period. That is an incredibly high rate.
The rates of youth attempted suicide in Grassy Narrows is 3 times that of other First Nations and 5 to 7 times that of non-Indigenous youth. The study shows a strong correlation between youth suicide attempts and maternal grandparents and mothers' mercury exposure, and particularly the mother's fish consumption during pregnancy.
We're very saddened by the report, but it's also confirmed what we've been fearing all along, the impacts of mercury on our people.
Chief Rudy Turtle is demanding government support for special education, counseling, mental health workers, and fair compensation for everyone in the First Nation.
We need a lot of help, and we've been asking for help for such a long time.
Kiwetnung MPP Saul Mamakwa lends his support to the community's demands, calling government actions inadequate and oppressive.
We cannot continue to accept that suicide attempts, completed suicides, is normal. We cannot continue to accept colonialism anymore.
The study suggests that the neuropsychiatric effects of mercury on children and their mothers may be compounding the intergenerational consequences of residential school trauma and the economic and social upheaval caused by the loss of traditional lifestyle. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
Leaders from several First Nations in the Northwest rallied in Toronto on Thursday outside the Ministry of Mines office near Queen's Park. They're opposed to the Ford government's mining agenda. Representatives from Grassy Narrows, KI, Neskantaga, and Wapakeka held the rally over the noon hour. They say the province has granted thousands of mining claims without First Nations consent and is now aiming to fast-track dangerous mine approvals, delay safe closure plans, and build environmentally disastrous roads. The groups have launched 3 legal actions against unwanted mining exploration on their territories, which cover an area of over 60,000 square kilometers.
The Ontario government really wants to divide the First Nations and also trample our rights and our First Nations. The alliance that we have with other nations here like KI, Grassy Narrows, and other nations that are here clearly demonstrates that we are not going to stand for that. I think clearly the people in our communities, in our homelands, need to be the decision makers when it comes to accessing our traditional homelands. It requires their informed consent. It requires their informed participation, and that's not happening right now.
Meanwhile, Neskantaga First Nation is also asking the courts to weigh in on the government's duty to consult on the matter. We'll have more on that after the break. Niskantika First Nation is asking the Ontario Superior Court of Justice to weigh in on the province's duty to consult when it comes to development in the Ring of Fire. The First Nation made their case at a hearing in Toronto last week. They're arguing that Queen's Park is not living up to its obligations under the Environmental Assessment Act. Chief Christopher Muniz says the Ford government is pushing ahead with road and resource development in the Ring of Fire without proper consultation or the free, prior, and informed consent of the people of Niskantika.
Consultation in our view has not happened because the crises, the evacuations we had during the pandemic, and the boil water advisory for 28 years, and the community hasn't been able to meet. Consent hasn't happened, and it will not happen until we're properly consulted and accommodated.
A spokesperson for the Ministry of Natural Resources and Forestry declined to comment, saying it would be inappropriate while the matter is before the courts. Evacuees from Edmonton will have to hold on at least a few more days before they can go home. Hundreds were evacuated to Thunder Bay and Niagara Falls after a fire damaged the community's water treatment plant more than 2 weeks ago. Chief Sol Atlucan had expected water quality test results by now, but he received word that an unspecified error will delay the results until Monday. Without positive test results, the community will remain without running water, and the First Nations' most vulnerable members and their families will continue living in hotels here and in Niagara. Nearly 700 people have now been evacuated, just over than 40% of Edmonton's on-reserve population. While some are making the best of the situation, others have posted on social media that they just want to go home. The new federal electoral boundaries for Ontario are now official. And while the Thunder Bay Rainy River riding will remain virtually the same, the boundaries for Thunder Bay Superior North will grow to include most of the Matawa First Nations. The riding's new boundary will now cover several areas that were previously in the Kenora, Timmins, and Algoma ridings. This includes 5 of the 9 Matawa First Nations, as Martin Falls, Webuquet, Edmonton, Niskantika, and Nibiminik will now be in Thunder Bay Superior North. The riding will also now include Puckasaw National Park near Marathon. Current riding MP Patty Haidu says the inclusion of more remote communities will provide an extra challenge.
Travel in and out of remote communities without road access is challenging in the best of times, and to be an effective representative, one has to visit communities to meet members on the ground. You can certainly work with elected leaders in Thunder Bay, for example, or in other settings, but to really get the feel for communities and what matters to them, it's important to get to those communities, and so that will provide opportunity and challenge for the next Member of Parliament for Thunder Bay Superior North.
The new boundaries won't take effect until the next federal election. Work has been progressing at the Matawa Training and Wellness Center on Algoma Street in Thunder Bay. Is just weeks away from a partial opening. The renovated facility will provide transitional housing, skill development, and more. Mike Lang reports.
Over $12 million of renovations have gone into the Matawa Wellness and Training Center. The big project began in 2020, and since the last time we checked in on the progress in October, there's been a lot of work done to reach this stage. The lower levels are nearly complete, with 21 individual accommodation units and 6 family transitional housing units. Matawa is now fielding applications for tenancy. The units and lounge spaces are fully furnished and expected to be open to members by September.
Our population goes between Thunder Bay and their home community, or that reside in Thunder Bay or the district, and still require services that support their needs and their development and really wrap around them in a holistic way to meet their needs across the board.
The training center will offer life skills training, such as cooking lessons in the brand new community kitchen, as well as cultural programming and individualized healthcare services. Halyuk says it will be invaluable to have everything under one roof.
Being able to get that physical health through the health cooperative, that supportive growth of the family, parenting skills, anger management, life skills, all those things through our program. And then, when they're ready to take that next step, going into education programs to further their growth and their independence is just such an amazing opportunity.
Matawa will offer that education and career training through their KCEDS program.
We work with Government of Canada, Service Canada, and what we do is provide employment training and education resources to our adult members within Matawa.
Those programs will take place in classes on the upper floor, where renovations are progressing as expected.
The next phase is actually installing all the walls and the interior, and then we would be moving into our new space in approximately June of 2024.
We're excited to offer services, and we're looking forward to having all our colleagues join us here at the building and being truly a hub and a wraparound service for our membership.
The next major phase of the $44 million renovation project is the health cooperative wing on the main floor. Matawa will need millions in additional government funding before proceeding, but construction is poised to begin as soon as it's received. Mike Lang, TBT News.
A 20-year-old Long Lac man has been charged with aggravated assault in connection with an incident that left a 21-year-old man in hospital with serious injuries. According to Greenstone OPP, police and EMS responded to the incident last Sunday night and located the victim at a residence on Long Lac Centennial Drive. The investigation is ongoing. Work has begun on the revamping of Marathon's Pebble Beach. We'll be right back with that story and more. After a late start due to weather, construction at Marathon's Pebble Beach is well underway. Carl Langdon reports with an update from the site.
With summer in full swing, Pebble Beach remains closed to the public. We caught up with Mayor of Marathon, Rick Dumas, who offered us an update on the expected date of completion.
They got off to a little bit of a late start because of the weather in the spring, with the freeze up, and so it's about a month behind. So we're going to hopefully have our park back by late September, early October.
This does mean the public won't have the chance to enjoy Pebble Beach this summer, but a mid-autumn date of completion should offer beautiful sights from the new scenic viewing area.
We had to revisit the tender and work with the local contractors who put a bid in and reduce the amount of stuff happening. We were going to put a campsite, an enhanced playground area. We had to reduce those and just went to the boardwalk, landing area, scenic view area, parking lot, and steps down to the lake. And we're talking well over $1 million for that portion of it. So.
With Marathon having a population that's just over 3,000, putting together funds for an amenities project costing over $1.3 million is easier said than done. But money from Ottawa and the Northern Ontario Heritage Fund ultimately helped move the plan from concept to shovels in the ground.
We always talked about enhancing it, but of course it's always about money. So, with the help of the provincial and federal governments, we're able to do those things. And that's always, it's about partnership and working with the other levels of government.
The provincial grant came out to $450,000 of the project's total cost, part of the NOHFC's efforts to fund tourist and community well-being projects in the region. Carl Langdon, TBT News.
For locals and cross-country travelers alike, the long-awaited reopening of the Burger Scoop in Ignace was a big deal for an area where food options are few and far between.
I'm gonna be honest, I didn't think it was actually gonna reopen. For the last 3 years, they said it was gonna be reopening. But now that it's open, it's nice. I've been here almost every day to get some ice cream.
It's exciting to have it back because it has it was the most known thing. People would come across Canada just like, oh, I can't wait to eat for the Burger Scoop.
So we're from Maple Ridge, British Columbia, and we're heading down to Prince Edward because it was our bucket list. And we just came here because we're hungry and we wanted something to eat. And this restaurant looked pretty cozy and chill, so we just decided to come here.
Whether you're Ignace born and raised or just passing through, customers agree that it's nice to have another option for food in the area. For many, the roadside diner is a beloved summertime staple that includes new owner Miriam Cook, who fell in love with the Burger Scoop on her frequent trips between her home and Thunder Bay and her community of Slate Falls Nation.
I've stopped here many times over the years since it's been open. Since I can remember, I've always stopped in here for the burgers and the ice cream. I officially bought it last summer. It was about July. The place had been closed for about 3 years. And it's taken a lot of work to open up.
Cook says they're still working from the original recipe book and that she's gotten great feedback from diners who have been keeping them busy since the reopening. Young Indigenous writers from across the province were gathered in Thunder Bay last Saturday to receive the James Bartleman Indigenous Youth Creative Writing Award. It's the first time in 3 years that the ceremony was held in person and the first time it has ever been held outside Queen's Park. Lee Noonan was there.
Hailing from Ottawa to Attawapiskat, winners of the 2020, 2021, and 2022 James Bartleman Awards were recognized for their creative writing talents in a ceremony at Fort William Historical Park.
What struck me was the wide range of your work. For some it was verse and some prose. For some it was about the everyday, realistic, and others about the fantastic, what could be.
Ontario's Lieutenant Governor Elizabeth Dowdeswell presented the young Indigenous writers with their awards. The winners are chosen by an independent committee and receive a citation and $2,500 in prize money.
It should give everybody in this room a sense of what real potential there is, what hope there is for each of them as individuals, but also for those of us who can learn from Indigenous teachings.
Kentley Gardner of Thunder Bay and Eagle Lake First Nation is the 2021 winner in the Junior Off Reserve category for her poem, Take Me Home.
My poem was about my reserve and going home, but what gave me a hard time was at the end I had written about my grandfather, which has just recently passed, so I got a little choked up.
Gardner says the win has helped encourage her to keep writing, saying she felt excited and a little bit nervous as she accepted the award and recited her winning poem.
Take me home to Cuckoo's hugs. Take me home to Papa's love. Take me home where I need to be. Take me home where I can be free.
Fort William First Nation Chief Michelle Solomon says the ceremony brought her back to her own years as a student.
There was really nothing in the schools at that time to inspire Indigenous pride. There was nothing in the school system that reflected back to you anything about who you are. So, today honoring 12 young Indigenous people for creative writing is, I just think that gives me hope for the future.
2023 winners are expected to be announced in the fall, and submissions are already open for 2024. The contest is open to all Indigenous students in Ontario, 18 and under, with categories for junior and senior, on reserve, off reserve, and fly-in communities. Lee Noonan, TBT News.
A special ceremony was held last weekend, which saw the unveiling of a new name for the Geraldton Regional Airport. It's now named after Ronald Boyot, who served as mayor of Long Lac for 12 years and mayor of Greenstone for another 12. Bolio says he was very honored by the gesture and expressed his gratitude to both the people of Greenstone and the 2 councils who voted in favor of the name change. Bolio chose to retire as mayor just before the 2022 election after serving the communities for a total of 24 years. We caught up with him to get his thoughts on the special honor and ask whether he has any advice for the amalgamated municipality going forward.
All the taxpayers, whether you're from Beardmore, Jellicoe, doesn't matter where, when you pay taxes, you're paying taxes to Greenstone. So we're all paying for that airport. And I just said that it should be called Greenstone Regional Airport. Well, then they're calling it Renal. Why Beaulieu Greenstone Airport? Whether it's an event going on in Geraldton or an event going on in Long Lac or in Beardmore, we got to find a way to focus and trying to get people in so that we can all get to be a big happy family.
Bolio also shared that this honor serves as an example for young people that commitment to one's community leads to positive outcomes. Pilots with the Wasaya Airlines have a tentative new deal after 5 months of negotiations. According to the union, the new contract should help with pilot retention and will have increased compensation, stronger job security protections, and better working conditions. The vote to ratify the contract closes on August 10th. The airline employs about 80 pilots serving 24 remote First Nations. And that's all the time we have for this edition of Northwest Newsweek. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.